Thank you very much. From talking to military groups, it is evident that the Taliban are still blocking Afghans from gaining entrance to Hamid Karzai International Airport. And even when Afghans make it onto the airport, there have been instances when they have been escorted off due to paperwork issues. So I'd like to know what steps is the U.S. government taking to make sure that Afghans do have safe passage to the airport, and under what circumstances are Afghans with valid visas who are admitted to the airport ultimately escorted off of the airport grounds?
Jeff, it's difficult for us to answer that here at the Pentagon when we're not at the gates and on the ground at the airport. What I would tell you is a couple of things, and I recognize that no process is perfect, and that there are. I'm not disputing at all the accounts that you're relaying here today. That there may be hiccups and problems. We certainly recognize that. But let me just take a couple of steps back and tell you how this is working. And we've talked about this before. We have consular officers, now there's more than 30 at the airport, stationed at the gates with American troops who are helping them do their job of processing individuals as they come in, checking credentials, making sure that they are who they say they are, and that they are in a valid group that we're trying to move onto the airport grounds. Outside of that, the Taliban have set up checkpoints. We've talked about this before, and we are in daily communication with Taliban commanders about who we want to see get in and what the credentials are, what they look like, what's valid, and that communication happens literally every day. We have been nothing but open with the Taliban about who we expect them to let in. Again, fully recognize that it's that not every step of this process is in our firm control, and that there are going to be instances where it doesn't work as advertised. But I can tell you that there isn't a single day that goes by where Admiral Vasey and General Donahue aren't working this in a very personal way with Taliban authorities outside the airport. Let me go with another one on the phone. Tara.
Thank you for doing this, John. Yesterday, the president mentioned also that he was calling upon the department to create contingency plans in case the number of Americans and Afghans that still need to get out have not gotten out by the 31st. Can you just explain kind of what the department is thinking about what its options might be to continue to get Americans out after the 31st if they haven't made it to the airport by then? And then just to follow on Jeff's question with Afghans that aren't getting through, have discussions gone on with the Taliban to maybe find some negotiation space for, they've said, no more Afghans can leave, but clearly, there's 10,000 at the airport. So something is happening behind the scenes that's helping some people get through. Can you talk about that to some extent?
I'll turn it over to the general.
Yeah, so I'll start with that last question first. It kind of comes off of some things that Mr. Kirby just said with that constant communication. I know the most senior commanders on the ground are out and discussing with the Taliban leaders that are manning these checkpoints exactly what the documentation needs to look like, times and coordination, details of that. As we know, though, there are reports of that some that aren't able to get through there. And I can tell you that the Department of State, the consular affairs officers that are there, are working with our commanders there to ensure that documentation, names, and those things, as often as required, are being communicated to the Taliban that are out those checkpoints to allow transition in there to get into the gates.
And then, Tara, on contingency plans, obviously, I'm not going to get ahead of the planning process. We are a planning organization. One of our main jobs is to make sure that the president has options. And as he made clear yesterday, he wants to see this mission complete by the end of the month. We are still working towards that goal, but we will be drafting up potential, what we call in the military, branches and sequels. If, in fact, we believe a conversation needs to be had later on in the month that the timeline might need to be extended. For what purpose? For what number? For how long? All of that is baked into the planning process, and I'm just not going to get ahead of what the planners are doing.